World, The Ultimate Visual History. Many of you have this book either en route to you right now or in your hands. I encourage you to flip through it as we enter today's festivities. So this stunning book is a definitive and very thorough account of the Jurassic World trilogy, which I assume all of you are very well versed in. It's chock full of never before seen imagery and rare and exclusive interviews with key creatives from the series. It's a must-have collectible for fans of the Jurassic, both film series, Park and World. I am thrilled today to present both the author of this book, James Mottram. James, if you want to wave, go ahead. In conversation with Glen McIntosh, a paleo artist and animator who has worked on numerous Jurassic Park and World films. This conversation will be moderated by the wonderful Derrick Davis, who is a contributing writer at Jurassic Outpost and the creator of Jurassic Time. Today's conversation is going to open up to a Q&A. I gathered from my exchanges with several of you that you have tons of questions that you would like to ask both James and Glen. So if you do have questions, I encourage you to do so, to submit them in the right-hand panel there. You'll see a button with a question mark in it. Go ahead and pop your questions in that section. I'd love for y'all to really get into the chat and keep that a bit separate so the questions don't get lost, but feel free to connect with your fellow Jurassic enthusiasts in the chat throughout the entire conversation. After that Q&A, we're going to jump into a really quick giveaway of some amazing Insight Editions Jurassic themed products. And the event will be recorded. So if you have to hop out or if you have a friend that you want to share it with, I'll be sharing the recording link after. All right, everyone, thank you so much. Let's get those questions going. And Derrick, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Alrighty then. So, I mean, the two of you, James and Glen, obviously you have a connection with the world of dinosaurs and the world of Jurassic Park and Jurassic World that has connected with your respective careers. It's like, what is it about the world of Jurassic and the world of dinosaurs that excites both of you? I guess we'll start with Glen first, since he has the most direct connection with this world.
Well, thank you for the question, and thank you so much for inviting me and letting me be a part of this. It's a great honor to be a part of James's book. I know that for me, I grew up in Calgary, Canada, which is very close to Drumheller, Canada, which is where they have the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Paleontology, which is where a lot of the bones that you see in all of the museums around the world are replicas of bones that are found in that valley, that Red Deer River Valley in Montana and that whole area. So for me, it was going there when I was very young, and I had a great fascination with them because they, to me, felt like sort of like the real version of the Ray Harryhausen monsters that came to life. And so I always loved drawing, so I would always draw whatever I saw and I liked when I got home. So drawing and love of dinosaurs sort of combined the two loves into animation.
No, that's great. I mean, so much work and passion has to go into it to get like the designs as accurate as possible to dinosaurs at the time of you creating them, because as we all probably know, dinosaurs can evolve over time in terms of new discoveries and new findings. So, I mean, look at Spinosaurus, for example. I mean, that guy's had a whole life after death.
Right.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, its design change has just gone through so many iterations, and I don't think anyone has still arrived on a definitive look. Like I know that Dr. Donald Henderson, who's one of the curators of the Royal Tyrrell, still has puts out papers and has debates about what the exact use of the sail was and the tail and how it potentially could have walked, whether it was a biped or a quadruped. So there's it's what's been so amazing is the evolution of these movies in the past 30 years. We've learned so much. So it's amazing to see like just how much more we're going to learn in the next 30 years.
Yeah, definitely. Now, James, how about for you, like the world of Jurassic? Like, how is it, connected with you during your time that you've written 2 books now?
Yeah,
history.
yeah, it's true. I sort of wrote these books, the Jurassic Park Ultimate Visual History and the Jurassic World one, kind of simultaneously, or at least I researched them simultaneously. I was sort of doing interviews all through the kind of lockdown period, and I was just kind of reaching here, there, and everywhere. And you know, your respect for these films just grows and grows and grows when you do a book or books like these. I mean, you know, you just have to look back at Jurassic Park. That is such a watershed moment in cinema, in the history of cinema. I mean, obviously with the sort of ushering in the digital revolution in terms of sort of visual effects, it's just, it's such an incredible piece of work, and remains that way. And yet, I think what I really fell in love with writing these books is the enthusiasm of fans. It's, you can only really compare it to Star Wars fans in terms of their enthusiasm and obsession and just love, and sort of deep love for these. And really, it's 6 movies, so it's a much smaller range of movies than the Star Wars sort of franchise, and each one has evolved and taken the franchise in a new direction. I absolutely loved what Colin did on Jurassic World. You know, basically did what we all wanted to see, which was the park finally open, and yet he's, you know, he steered it, along with many other people, of course, in a, you know, in another direction, sort of obviously with Dominion bringing them onto, well, even in Fallen Kingdom, bringing them onto the mainland, and even now with something like Camp Cretaceous, taking it again in a different direction. And even with the new one that's coming out in November, I think, Hidden Adventure, the sort of choose your own adventure path. I mean, they just keep reinventing it, and in quite fresh and interesting ways. So yeah, that's just some of the things that I love about it.
Yeah, no, it's, I mean, especially to have that kind of like drive to go into, you know, amassing 6 movies worth of details. I mean, that's a lot to organize. It's just so much information from different people, I imagine, different people, different stories. So I mean, like, what kind of, you know, for James, like, what kind of organization do you have to do to keep track of all of this?
That's a very good question. It was difficult, but you know, the more you get into it, the more you do become organized in your head. I live in London, and we have a very good film library here, the British Film Institute. So I went in there and dug into as many articles as possible. I mean, this is, you know, referenced in both books, well, particularly the first book, but I have to pay, you know, due credit to sort of Jodie Duncan's making of books were absolutely masterful. Never mind that they're about Jurassic, they're amongst some of the best making of books I've ever read about any movie. So detailed. And Jodie's articles at Cinefex as well were absolutely invaluable. I have to say also, Derrick, this is entirely true, I use the Jurassic Outpost site quite a lot as well. Partly because you had all of the scripts for the early movies uploaded, which again was absolutely invaluable to me. And then it's, you know, meeting people like Glenn. You know, you get certain people who are absolutely breakthrough people who, I mean, Glenn and I spent about 2 hours on the phone or Zoom, I can't remember, but you know, we just talked and talked, or rather Glenn talks, because he just has so many wonderful recollections. And it's people like that. I mean, another one for me was David Vickery, when I was doing the new book, who obviously is the visual effects supervisor. He knows so much about the Jurassic universe. Colin Trevorrow, obviously, I had a number of sessions with him. Bryce Dallas Howard was amazing. You know, there are so many people that just build up your knowledge bit by bit, basically. And it's like putting a giant jigsaw together, and trying to keep it all in your head is very difficult.
God, yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah, definitely. And so Glenn, you're you know, you obviously love dinosaurs, as we can see right behind you.
Yeah, who would have known?
Yeah, totally. So you were actually working on Jurassic Park 3 was your first foray into the Jurassic films, am I correct?
It was. I had always had a love of dinosaurs, but when I was at Industrial Light and Magic, they started doing animation test developments for Jurassic Park 3, and I was supposed to go on to be like a storyboard artist for Attack of the Clones. And Dan Taylor, who was the animation supervisor for Jurassic Park 3, he sat near me. And so I've loved dinosaurs ever since I was a little kid. So I would sort of like bring books into him, or like, like, oh, have you seen this book? Or, have you heard about this recent discovery? And it wasn't like trying to get the gig because I was already on Star Wars. But finally he went to management and he's just like, look, can I get this guy as one of my lead animators? Because like he seems super enthusiastic about it. And I was like, sure, like that'd be great. So it was great because I already had a love for it, and so to be able to to transition onto it was like super easy because it was so much fun. And then to become the Raptor lead, and then you specifically hone in on that type of movement, and then they'd be like, oh well, no one's animating the big fight between the Spino and the T-Rex. Do you want to do that? And you're like, got 3 weeks to go, and you're like, but you can't. It's something you cannot say no to as an animator. And so and plus I had the opportunity to work with so many talented artists like Joe Johnston, who directed Captain America and The Rocketeer, and of course designed all of the amazing spaceships in the Star Wars movies. So it was a great opportunity to work with him as well. So all around, it was just like okay. This is, we're not going to get much sleep for the next few weeks, but it was the sort of thing that you couldn't say no to.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially when you got the call 14 years later, right, for Jurassic World. I mean, that's such a huge gap. I mean, was that exciting for you to go back into that world, or like unexpected?
So excited. Well, it was always sort of people talked about it and suspected that it would be something that Steven Spielberg would potentially be interested in, tipping his toe back into. And we were always wondering, is this ever gonna happen again? And we all just kind of like, well, we'll see, maybe someday, fingers crossed. And then it actually started to gain momentum. And then as far from a script point of view, and then everyone started talking about Colin Trevorrow's first film, Safety Not Guaranteed, and how he is friends with J.J. Abrams, and J.J. Abrams was being courted to direct the Jurassic movie, where people try and, in Hollywood, it's essentially just people trying to figure out each other's schedules. Like, well, I can't do it this, for the next few months because I'm working on this movie, but I could do it in this section, but then I can't do it in this section. And you realize it's just a big, like, jumbling of pieces of trying to fit the right people into the right slot at the right time. And so he couldn't do it, but he suggested Colin Trevorrow, and Colin came into it with just an enthusiasm that I think really impressed Steven, and with his take on it. And it was only his second movie. And and so me being so enthusiastic about dinosaurs, I brought my enthusiasm to it. So we obviously had the opportunity to learn from the old masters that had taken us through the original Jurassic. So we always had Dennis Muren and Phil Tippett just kind of looking over, and Frank Marshall just kind of looking over our shoulders, just like, what are they up to, and making sure that we didn't do anything too crazy. But we always wanted to be reverential of not only those stories, but the style of movement that Phil and his team had created for the Jurassic films. And as far as, making them feel like big, huge animals. And that meant doing a lot of research and a lot of studying for the animation team.
Yeah, because if you don't have dinosaurs, you don't have a movie. You got to get them right, or people will go knives and pitchforks on the internet. Be careful. But no, that's great though. I mean, and especially like people love. I mean, going back to JP3 just for a second, like people love, the Velociraptors, especially in Jurassic Park 3, just the way they were designed and the way they interacted and everything. It was just amazing, and I agree. But of course,
and like with the round pupil and the quills, like they were moving more and more towards like bird type styles. So I wanted to incorporate bird type movements into their head ticks, and the way they would like turn and look at something, or just get more. And then talking to Jack Horner, you know, you're talking to one of the top paleontologists in the world, and he was just kept saying, you know, hammering into my head, you know, think bird, 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 bird. And so anytime we focused on a particular scene, we would, you know, I would have the animators call up a scene from YouTube of a blue heron hunting a gopher, or an eagle, you know, walking the way it ambled, or the way a hawk would like turn and look at its prey, and just all those little moments that you're trying to get from the natural world into the animation to make it feel like, oh, I've seen that on an animal before, and that's a good thing. Like, it made the audience realize, like, that reminds me of a crow or a hawk or an elephant or something nice, you know, so that it feels more real to you, and you're not exactly sure why, but that's why that was sort of always the main goal, where I would show that to Dennis and Phil, and they'd be like, try and put a little bit more elephant into this shot, or a little bit more lion into this shot, you know, just anything that pulls something that we would never see in the real world in our time, obviously, into our world. We're like, oh, that reminds me of something I've seen at the zoo. And then it just felt like a real animal. And so doing that was a lot of fun and very rewarding.
Yeah, and it shows on the screen just like the extra realism. I mean, you know, in Jurassic World, the Raptors especially are kind of the stars of that movie, you know, the Raptor squad, you know, in Jurassic World. So
Right.
it was great to see them, you know, fully realized, you know, or continue to be fully realized, you know,
Yeah.
as every
And
movie
it
went
was,
on.
and it was also fun. Like, we didn't know how much animatronics were going to be used. We didn't know how much the CG was going to be used. So it was sort of because Jurassic Park 3 didn't perform as well as the first Jurassic Park movie, obviously. So it was kind of a question mark. Like, it wasn't like a known, like the Marvel movies, where it's like, okay, this movie's going to make $1 billion. People were very unsure about Jurassic Park 3. So, you know, but you're sort of like, you know, trying to embellish on that mythology and make it bigger and better. But with a lot of that work, you're trying to do things that you've make the animal, you know, just make that world richer and make that world bigger, and make people, you know, like, see that the dinosaurs in like, exactly like Alan Grant says, more like animals, not monsters. But as far as the animatronics goes, I would always fight to be there on set, where I'd be holding the styrofoam head that was representative of the raptor, instead of just being on a C-stand that they would lock into place. And they were like, well, you know, what do you get out of that? And I'm like, well, I don't get anything out of it. I could animate it going wherever, but if it's just locked there, it doesn't give the actor anything. Meaning that with Chris Pratt was, you know, 3 feet away from a Bengal tiger, and he had to take something off of its head, and he didn't know if it was going to snuggle him or rip his arm off, you'd be scared out of your mind. So between each take, I would pull back, or I would dart towards him, and he didn't know what I was going to do. So he would do these little movements in his acting, which was great, because then we could then put that into the animation. So he gives us something, and then we could give him something back, so that it feels like it's more there. And then that really helped. So definitely helping. So
Yeah.
for sure.
See, I love those kind of stories. That's stuff that, you know, people don't know unless they were there, that's how they happen. And, you know, James, was there any stories that you were told, you know, for the book that, you know, just couldn't make the cut? Because, you know, books can only be so long, can't be 1,000 pages. So, like, was there anything you were told that had to be cut?
Well, I thought you were about to ask what was my favorite anecdote from the book, and I'll just tell you that before we get into that question, but only because it's Glenn related, and it's from Fallen Kingdom, where, you know, in a way, Glenn, you're as much as an actor as some of those credited on the film. I mean, when you were being the baryonyx basically in that tunnel sequence.
Yeah.
You were dressed in a unitard, which I think is just a delightful image, basically.
Those are very unforgiving. If you haven't been on the Stairmaster, those were very unforgiving.
Yes, I can imagine. But so that was one of my favorite anecdotes. Glenn being part of that, you know, really taking a part of that baryonyx and, you know, becoming that. Yeah, in terms of stories that didn't make it, I know that people wanted to know about the Iris death scene that was filmed. And I did talk to people about that. And the problem with these books is you need good material to back up your narrative, let's say. And there just wasn't enough, as well as there wasn't the room for it. There just wasn't enough strong material to really talk about that. I did talk to J.A. Bayona about it a little bit, but what I got out of him just wasn't really enough to include it in the book. I wish I could sort of give you all a great juicy anecdote about it. I followed up with Derrick Connolly about these sort of rumors about Ian Malcolm supposedly being more included in the in the original drafts, and he didn't really remember anything about that. So now that's not to say there wasn't a version somewhere, but yeah, he had no recollection of it. Obviously, the problem is you're going back. Well, in this case, what was it? Sort of 7-8 years ago, I suppose, 9 years ago, whenever they were writing the script for Fallen Kingdom. So people's memories can be fuzzy sometimes, unfortunately. Yeah, so there were a few things that you would love to have included, but again, a lot of it is down to space. I mean, both books I wrote, I think both books run to about 76,000 words, and both were longer and got cut down just because of just space, basically, which is heartbreaking, obviously. But and you want to sort of give everyone, some sort of. I mean, my favorite Jurassic. I mean, you guys will know this, obviously, but the thing that's in that's playing on Nedry's monitor in the control room. The film that's playing in the background, which can barely be seen, obviously, is Jaws. I mean, most people, like most super fans, know that. But I just love that detail, and I really wanted to get that in the book, but it just didn't really fit in the narrative, and it just has to go.
Right.
So your favorite moments kind of have to go, which is it's very annoying. But you have to really serve the story of how they made these films first of all.
Yeah, and that
was part of the one. Yeah, I was like when we were on set and the island is supposed to be exploding and they've got lava dripping from the ceiling, and it turns out that kitty litter on fire looks great on film.
Another good anecdote, that kitty litter anecdote.
Oh, so that's like this flaming kitty litter pouring down from the ceiling, which was hilarious. But it looks amazing on film. But the stuntman was Baryonyx had to grab this guy's pant leg and pull him back down, and it's like he was waiting for me to do it. And I said, "No, you just got to go. I'll just grab you." And he had on these big hiking boots, and he kicked my hand, and on like the sixth take, and the second unit director was like, "I think we got it." And I go, "Yeah, I think we did too." Like, I don't want to do a seventh. That hurt, but it just those little moments where you're like, nah, it can be better. We want it to look like he's really trying to get out of there, and this thing's really snagging his pants. Like, you don't want to shortchange the audience, and so you're doing all these things. Later that night at the hotel, you're like, yeah, that kind of hurt, but it's in the movie, so it's worth it.
Yeah, people at home, do not try flaming kitty litter at home, please. Please, we want to hear these reports.
I was surrounded by like dozens of professionals with a fire team at every exit telling us what we shouldn't be doing, and that was number one on the list. So it was good to be around those people that knew exactly what they were doing, and and telling me exactly where to stand, because otherwise there could have been some problems. But they were so good at what they did, and it was such a safe set, even though there's so many events in the movie that don't look safe. So we would have constant safety meetings about where you need to stand and so forth, which was I never felt in danger. It was just always fun to see everyone trying to do their best.
Well, yeah, I mean, safety has to be guaranteed in this case, right?
Very good. Well done.
Well, I see we're amassing some questions, so I think we'll go to some of our viewer questions. Let's see. The very first one is from Justin Peterson, and he says, "What was the most surprising anecdote or fact uncovered when researching writing this book?" And I think, James, you kind of already answered that a little bit, but if you want to elaborate even more.
Do you mean the one regarding the Nedry Jaws thing, you mean, or something else?
Yeah, just or something else, yeah.
what else did I find that was surprising? God, there was so much, really. I'll come back to that if I can think of something.
Okay. Gotcha. All right, so the second question in the meantime is from Josh Rassick, and he says, it was mentioned in the book that the Biosyn amber mines contained 90s style Biosyn logos, but unfortunately can't be seen in the film itself. Do you have any further information on where we can see these? I'm really intrigued by the environmental storytelling. I agree with him.
Yeah,
I want to see those too.
That's a really good point, actually. Because I actually rewatched Dominion last night, and I was just but didn't notice at the time that those logos are just not to be seen. But that's the nature of being a production designer. Yeah, that was Kevin Jenkins, wasn't it, that sort of told me that long anecdote about that. But you can design all this stuff, and it just is in the background and doesn't really end up on film. It would be great to see more of that. I mean, the one element that surprised me in Dominion was sort of having read a version of the script probably over a year ago now, and the Dilophosaurus scene where the Dilophosaurus attack Claire. And I checked this last night when I was sort of rewatching it. In the script, and this is mentioned, I think, in the book, that the venom is supposed to be caught by Kayla in her glove, and you see in the resulting film her kind of throwing her glove off, but what you see is Chris Pratt's character strangling the Dilophosaurus, and then they kind of dispatch with it there. But so you don't really see the catching of the venom. So maybe they just decided to cut it out. But that was like a lovely moment. I thought that would have been great in the film, but I guess they decided not to go with it.
Yeah, and I mean, things are going to be cut just like in the book itself. So I mean, I guess they're trying to up the pacing of a scene or the pacing of the action. So I mean, unfortunately, cool details like that and like the logo, unfortunately have to get cut. I mean, did you actually see the logo ever, or you were just told about it?
I was just told about it. I never saw any artwork for it, as I remember. So I don't know. I mean, as I say, it's probably one of those, if you go back to the set, it'll most certainly be there. Well, obviously the set will have been struck now, but it's a shame because that's the nature of production designers' work. Like I said, you see so little of it on screen, or it flashes past in a second.
Yeah, but it's just still nice to know that those details existed, right?
Yeah.
Just to know that it was that fleshed out, which is why artists like Glenn are so important to create the world and create the characters.
Oh, I remembered an answer to your the previous question, by the way, a surprising detail. Well, just a detail I absolutely loved, and it's totally visible in Dominion, where you have this kind of Biosyn garden that you see a few scenes in, and of course that's where the final battle takes place, and where the T-Rex walks past the circle, this sort of giant circle that's just in the middle of the garden, and of course it effectively recreates the Jurassic logo, and that's obviously been done deliberately. And I just thought that was such a cool detail when I heard that way before, of course, I saw the film, and I think it was David Vickery that told me that, and I just thought, oh, that's such a cool idea. And I think what they don't do in the film is the dinosaur keeps moving; it doesn't stop in the middle of the circle, which is kind of what I imagined it to do. But it still was such a beautiful idea, and just kind of sums up the artistry going on. That's a 1 second moment in the film, and yet would take probably weeks to set up, I would imagine.
No, that's great.
I know that one of the sketches that I had done for the petting zoo was the idea that just coming up with different, like what animals would you see in the petting zoo? What dinosaurs would be really good in a petting zoo, and what ones would be potential lawsuit disaster? And so we had come with these like baby ceratopsians that you could ride, and I had done this one quick little sketch where the little boy is feeding it an ice cream cone, and right behind him is this big sign that says, please do not feed us human food. We already get our dino food, or something like that. But just sort of like sort of going back to the general thesis of Jurassic Park is just like nature's going to get along just fine without us. And just the constant mistakes that humans are making. Little boy isn't trying to be bad by feeding the ice cream to the Triceratops, but it's just another example of like goofing up again. He's not supposed to be giving ice cream to this dinosaur. And then when I was on the set at the elephant enclosure in Honolulu, our first day, and they moved the elephants into the behind the enclosure there, so that all the extras could be out there, and that was going to be the Pteranodon petting zoo area where the Pteranodons attack. And there was this sign: "Please do not feed us human food." And I was like, I thought that was so cool that someone had seen that and made that into a real sign. This little idea I had made it into the movie, which was really rewarding and really fun. So the other thing that was interesting was that the elephants are such sensitive animals. That the elephants had been sort of herded over into the corner, and now the pteranodons are supposed to be attacking and running around and grabbing people and flying away and swooping down. And so we had like 200 extras running around in complete silence. And Colin's like, "Cut, guys." They're trying to. The assistant director's like, "Guys, they're swooping down. They're trying to kill you. These things are they're kamikaze dive bombing you, and they're attacking your children. They're out to get you. Let's go again, and action." And everyone starts screaming. They're just like crazy. And of course we hear the elephants start going nuts. And the manager comes running over to us, and he's like, "You can't be doing that. Like, elephants are incredibly sensitive animals. They can tell when something is in anguish or in pain." And they just didn't like the fact that they thought humans were in trouble. So it was so interesting to see that these elephants were like felt sorry for all these extras.
Glenn, I didn't even know that anecdote. You see, that would have gone in the book if I'd known that before. So that's a really good one. That's an exclusive right now.
That's why people tune in now.
See, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
And now there's actually, the next question is directed toward Glenn, and it's from Colleen Lindsay. And she says, "Glenn, how much input did you have in the design of the newer dinosaurs, the genetically designed ones, like the hybrids?"
Quite more than I thought, which was fantastic, because I like to be involved as soon as possible, because form follows function. And so I didn't want to get a design and then be held to like one piece of artwork and then, okay, now make it move like this, but the limbs are the incorrect length, or so and so forth. And so being involved that early, especially with Indominus Rex, like designing the new bad dinosaur, was so much fun. And I said, "Is it okay if I do some sketches?" And with my background in storyboarding, creature design, Colin's like, "Sure." And I noticed that a lot of the designs, if T-Rex's head is sort of sloped this way, we could go for something more like this. If it's supposed to be white, and the T-Rex is supposed to be sort of an opaque, an olive drab color, shape-wise, you've got to be able to take those two silhouettes and put them back to back. And with the amount of cutting there is in film nowadays, you've got to immediately be able to look at those two dinosaurs and go, "I know who is who." Like, this is the good dinosaur, this is the T-Rex. And so I was like looking at a lot of abelisaurs, like Majungasaurus and Rugops and Carnotaurus, like just to sort of like get a different structure and a different texture to the dinosaur, so that as much as possible when they start fighting, it's just not just some big motion blurry mess, that you could tell who was who. That was really important to me. So what's so exciting and what I was so thrilled about when I saw James's book is that how much of that process he's put into the book, and how many of my sketches made it in, which is just I've had sketches and art of books before, but never to this level, and that's all thanks to James, because and it was so much fun to see, because you always go into these movies just, that's your job. You do 200, 300 sketches, and if 200 or 300 of them get rejected, oh well, that's your job. But so to see the designs in the new book is really a treat.
Well, sort of, Derrick, I mean, as you sort of already noted, I mean, Glenn goes right back to Jurassic Park 3. He bridges the two franchises. I mean, even in Dominion, you were involved with that, the sort of prologue that went on the internet and is now back in the extended edition, which, I mean, just from a personal point of view, I think is one of the most beautiful sequences in any Jurassic movie, because it's very, very different to what we've seen in all the others. I mean, of course, it's supposed to be 65 million years ago. It is, the way they film it in that island Socotra was incredible. I mean, I'm just curious how you felt seeing that sequence put together.
Well, I was so thankful to be get that offer from Colin. Would you like to storyboard the opening sequence? And he had talked about Rite of Spring from Fantasia, and I'm just a Stanley Kubrick nut. Like, if we just pan around, I've got all these Stanley Kubrick books, and I loved the opening of 2001, where the Dawn of Man sequence, where it was just 17 minutes of just silence, because that's all the Earth was for 500 million years, as Earth, as life was starting to come on land from the ocean, and no car horns, no music, no, just absolute silence except the sounds of nature. And if you took a BBC documentary crew back in time, like, what would they see? And I just looked at the Dawn of Man sequence and took inspiration from that, of you're gradually being introduced to this world of the dinosaurs waking up. And to James's point, they filmed on the island of Socotra, which I already had a primordial quality to it. And so I did a lot of Google searches for the look they wanted. But of course, my cut came in at around, I wanted as few cuts as possible, and like really long lenses, like a documentary crew is trying to film these things from 2 miles away. And it came in at like 15 minutes, and Colin was like, "You're killing me." Like, it's supposed to be a modern day blockbuster. You're going to have kids looking on their phones and heading for popcorn after 3 minutes. And so it was going back to an older style where just like longer cuts and just letting the audience enjoy this time before we get into the action. And it was so much fun to play around with that, and then send notes to him, and then I'd get feedback from him, and he goes, "Well, why are these 2 shots? Why don't we make it 1 shot?" And I'm like, "Why don't we? That's awesome." So it was that was a real treat to do.
But that sequence is so important to set up the entire T-Rex versus Giganotosaurus battle, really. I mean, I don't know what you thought, Derrick, whether you feel it works much better having it back in the movie.
Oh, totally. I mean, it was, I know it wasn't Colin's idea to cut it, but it was wrong of Universal to cut it, basically. Because like you said, it does set up a battle. And it really just, and the drive-in sequence too, as one of my favorites, because I saw Jurassic Park in the drive-in the first time I saw it as a kid. They were clinging on to existence at the time in the early 90s. So like seeing that drive-in sequence was kind of like, a full circle for me. So it's like, oh, but thank God the extended cut brings it all back in. That's, in my opinion, the only way to watch the film at this point. So.
And what a double bill! Flash Gordon and American Graffiti that was supposed to be playing at that drive-in.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, there's all sorts of really funny Easter eggs in that prologue. So.
Yeah, I love it. Now this question's to James from Colleen Lindsay again. James, what was something that surprised you about the production of either Jurassic World or Jurassic Park when you were doing research?
Wow. I think with Jurassic Park, it's just the insane efforts they went to create these digital dinosaurs. I mean, I was talking earlier about breakthrough people that you speak to, when you're along the way, when you're researching this. And in the case of Jurassic Park, I'd spoken quite early to Dennis Muren and Phil Tippett, who are obviously complete legends, and they were great, and they give you a certain perspective. But then much, much later in the process, having already written at least 2 drafts, I kind of got in touch with a lot of, people that Glenn will know, of course, Mark DePay, Steve Spaz Williams, Stefan Fangmeyer, all those guys who were so important in the kind of, digital revolution, let's say. and they were the ones that opened my eyes to different stories and about how Jurassic Park got made. I mean, there's always different stories that people have different perspectives, and yeah, you know, the sort of secret nights that Steve and Mark spent creating these sort of skeletal digital you know, T-Rexes that were then eventually shown to Kathy Kennedy when she kind of popped around the office one day. And, you know, it's just things like that. You think, well, if those guys hadn't had that initiative to do that, maybe we wouldn't have, well, the digital revolution would have come eventually, obviously, but it may not have come through the Jurassic series anyway.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Let's see, to both Glenn and James, what were your favorite aspects of the park and world aesthetics? And this is from, probably going to say his name wrong, I'm sorry, Mottram Sheik. There you go.
Go ahead, James.
Yeah, well, in terms of the aesthetics, well, I quite like the way you've got, I mean, the park design, you know, being the sort of yellow, green, sort of safari print, if we're talking about things like that. And then the way it translated to a steel blue gray color in Jurassic World, much more corporate and business-like in a way.
Yeah.
Compared to the Hammond coloring, which was more like those theme parks you probably all remember from the 90s, I guess. Although the ones we had in the UK were pretty lame, so we wouldn't have had anything like that. But yeah, I kind of really like that. You know, the whole point of Colin's series is the sort of corporatization, if that's a word, of you know, obviously they're turning it into a huge conglomerate kind of business, and that coloring just seemed to suit that kind of universe so well. So I think they really very cleverly looked at how these kind of corporations, you know, build these theme parks and run these theme parks in modern day. So yeah, I thought those were kind of interesting. Just sort of the colors, the textures, I thought were, you know, it's not anything overt, but it's something that's in the back of your mind that you think, yeah, that's a very clever artistic decision that Colin and all his sort of art direction team, you know, sort of Ed Varro it was, and obviously Rick Carter helped out a little bit on Jurassic World, and all those. I mean, those guys again, they span, much like Glenn, they spanned the two franchises, and that's so vital to have that kind of connection across the two series.
And I loved the little Easter eggs that they put along Main Street, like Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville, and they actually got Jimmy Buffett in the shot carrying the margaritas as they're being attacked by the Dimorphodons, which I thought was hilarious. But that steakhouse that's on the corner that the Dimorphodons crash into, that's Winston's steakhouse. It's giving a little credit to Stan Winston. But then when you went over to the T-Rex enclosure, like if you go around this corner, you'll be entering the T-Rex paddock, and they had all these warnings of things you know, to do or not do if you're going to enter the pad, like going on a roller coaster. And I don't know if it made it into James's book or if it made it into the movie, but I loved all the little things, like, you know, if you have a weak heart, you know, like seeing a T-Rex, that's, you know, that's gonna scare the hell out of you. So, or have you gone to the bathroom before you see the T-Rex? So little things like that just, how much of them were in jokes and how much of them were Easter eggs, I don't know, but I love that attention to detail. Like I said about like the you know, don't feed us human food. Little things like that they peppered all over Main Street was just amazing, and it made it feel for us like a completely real environment. So
I think they even invented an entire menu for the Winston Steakhouse. It was one of the restaurants anyway, had an entire menu, yeah. And you think, again, that's the sort of stuff you're not really going to see on film, but it's just that fantastic attention to detail.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fully realized Jurassic World.
Yeah.
And speaking of Jurassic World again, another question from Mottram Sheik. With the Jurassic World opened up, is there any location you would like to see the dinosaurs in the potential future? So I guess past Dominion.
It's interesting. I was actually going to ask you guys just as to how you see the franchise unfolding now. I wonder if it'll be like the Star Wars universe, where they've obviously done TV shows, The Mandalorian and so forth, where they can sort of search into these corners of the Star Wars universe to find characters that aren't connected necessarily strictly to the Skywalker saga. And I wonder if they'll do something like that. I mean, I would put money on there being, I have no evidence for this, by the way, but I'd put money on there being a Kayla Watts spin-off, because DeWanda Wise was obviously fantastic in that role. And wouldn't it be cool just to see her, even if it's a prequel or something, seeing her flying dinosaurs back and forth? I'm sure she has some cool stories to tell. More information about that pet dino she has in the market, which is, there's lots of cool stuff you could do with Kayla. So I mean, yeah, I think it would be more character based. That's how I would see it happening. But I don't know. What do you think, Glenn?
I agree. There's a, the Royal Tyrrell is in the middle of nowhere in Drumheller, and they get 8,000 visitors a day, and their attendance triples when a Jurassic movie comes out. The curator told me that. So there's not only a love of dinosaurs across the board culturally, but there's a love of these movies, and that's only going to expand. I've had so many artists and animators and filmmakers come up to me and say, "Oh, I got into filmmaking because of Jurassic Park 3 or Jurassic World or whatever." But I've had just as many paleontologists come up and say that. So that's so rewarding, because I think people will always love dinosaurs because they occupy sort of that middle ground. You see how popular House of Dragons is on HBO, and they're essentially dinosaurs breathing fire. But it's the same thing with the Hobbit films and Smaug. It's like there's a fascination we have with these gigantic lizards that absolutely roam this world, and so knowing more about them and getting to know more about their world is, I think, will always be wanting to tell those stories.
Oh yeah, and like you said, they're important not just to the screen, but beyond the screen for different, places like zoos, museums, and everything like that. So it's an important, source of participation for everybody. So it's great that movies can transcend the screen like that. Now we have another question from Justin Peterson. Was there a dinosaur design or idea that didn't make it out of the concept phase that you were sad not to see in the movies?
Oh, that I was sad not to see. Oh, that's interesting. Well, okay. Well, this is me being super nerdy, but no kidding.
That's what we're here for.
That ship has sailed. So the mosasaur was technically not a dinosaur. It was a marine reptile, and it was a monitor lizard. And these mosasaurs got absolutely enormous. They got to 40 to 50 feet long. I mean, they're just absolutely gigantic creatures. And so when there's the sequence where it comes up and grabs the great white shark, we showed it to Steven, and Steven was like, "Guys, it's a great white. It's a Jurassic Park movie. You got to make it bigger. Go bigger. Go bigger." And we're like, "Okay." So we made it a little bit bigger, and he's like, "It's a Jurassic Park movie, guys. You got to go bigger." So we ended up scaling up that mosasaur to if you actually, scaled it out to the proper length that we scaled it out to, it was 120 feet long. So it was about the size of a blue whale. So then we started looking at reference of, saltwater crocodiles jumping out of the water to humpback whales jumping out of the water to, which they can do. They, 40 or 50 tons, they can do it. So then there's teeth on the roof of the mosasaur's mouth, and so I went to the modeler. We put that in. That made it in, not a problem. And then I went to Colin and I said, technically they should have giant forked tongues. And I only know that because Jack Horner said, there's a gland called the Cowper's gland. Sorry, not the Cowper's. The Jacobson's organ. Jacobson's organ pulls it back and plugs it into the tongue in to let it know whether there's blood in the water or whether there's blood in the air. And it says we can absolutely, put that in. And so I went to Colin. I said it should actually be like a forked tongue. And he goes, well, now we've scaled up our mosasaur to 120 feet. Now you want me to give it a forked tongue. So to, 0.1% of the audience that watches that movie, they're going to go, oh, cool. They actually went to the trouble of making sure that it's a forked tongue. But most of the audience, I think, would have looked at it and gone, I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that 120-foot long creature has a forked tongue like a giant dragon. So it's that was one of those things that didn't make it in, but I understood why it didn't make it in, because you're always walking that fine line, whereas you want it to be a giant animal that lives in nature and not a monster that lives as a creature of fantasy. So certain things that were let go, I totally understood why they were let go.
I love that. I'm just looking at one of the comments, by the way, and Daniel Stephen has said he'd love to see an authentic adaptation, or proper, he used the word, proper adaptation of the Lost World book, which I sort of know what he means, because I love the book, The Lost World, and obviously the Spielberg version veers off quite significantly. I just love the portrayal of Lewis Dodgson in that. He's completely sociopathic, basically. Obviously, he's a little bit more softened in what we get in the movies, but sadly I don't think that adaptation will ever happen. It's because obviously you'd be retreading a certain amount of Spielberg, and no one remakes Spielberg films.
Right. No.
They better not. And I guess Amanda, we're gonna do a giveaway, right?
Yes, we are. First, I just have to say, wow, that was incredible. What a cool experience to just have like nonstop nerding out about Jurassic Park and World every Tuesday morning for us. Wherever you are, you have this chunk in your day that you don't always get midweek. So thank you all for joining us. Sorry we didn't get to all of your amazing questions, but thank you for contributing. This was just a joy. It's why we do what we do at Insight. James, Glenn, Derrick, as I said leading up to this, your brains combined, just fantastic. If that doesn't demonstrate the value of this book, I don't know what will. So I'm sorry that we didn't get to all of you, but you will be able to find most of those questions addressed in the book itself. As for the giveaway, we have some really good products to share with y'all. I have some trivia questions that I suspect this will just be a who can type fast competition. Based on the depth of knowledge that I've gleaned from these questions. So first up, this is going to be a bundle, but the first product we have is this amazing lock and key journal. It is protected right now in plastic wrap. It's a lock and key diary with 2 keys, which is great because I am keen to lose at least one. And it has a invisible ink dinosaurs throughout with a light in the pen. So basically when you see a little icon, you can find the dinosaurs in the book. This is a great flex to just have on your work desk when you're taking notes and you're getting distracted in a meeting. We also have a projector ballpoint pen. You can project a T-Rex. I wish I could demo it here, but I can't turn the lights off. Or rather I can, I don't want to invite that kind of trepidation into my Tuesday. And you can project this onto a wall. It makes a huge T-Rex. Again, a really fun party trick that you can just bust out and
just in time for Halloween.
Exactly. And then we have an enamel charm bookmark. This is a really cool one. Our enamel bookmarks are great because they basically wrap around like a rubber band almost around the book. So you really don't have that slipping issue. So yeah, all of these will go together in a bundle and there will be several lucky winners. I have a few trivia questions, and how I'm going to pick the winner is whoever answers correctly, I'm just going to randomly select you from that bunch. So the first one up is, what does Indominus Rex mean? So brushing up on your Latin, let me know in the chat.
Do any of us
Indominus Rex.
Derrick's like, do I get to play?
No.
All right. Justin, you are right. It is Untamable King. And since no one else got that, you are a guaranteed winner, Justin. Congrats. Maybe I did get a tough question. Go me.
Yeah, it went through a lot of names. So to get Indominus, Untamable King, that's impressive.
It's an impressive name. Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, next up, what DNA is used to fill in missing dinosaur genomes?
Wow, fast.
Okay, bonus for tree frogs. I didn't know it was tree. I didn't know it was frogs specific. So yes, it is frogs. So I'm going to flip a coin. And then we have in the storyline, how many years have passed between the events in the original Jurassic Park and our first glimpse of Jurassic World?
Mm.
Good questions, Amanda.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad. I thought they were going to be too elementary based on how deep the nerddom goes. Yes, 22 years. And finally, I'm hoping this one might be a little bit trickier just because there's multiple parts. In Jurassic World, we are introduced to the Raptor squad. What are their names?
I know. Oh, wow, look at that. Boom.
Nice.
fast.
Yes, Blue. And in the
Holy
order I had them
cow.
listed too. Blue, Charlie, Echo, and Delta. Steven, it's you had Beta in there. That is very tempting to include, but it was Echo. Yeah. Glenn, can you say their genetic makeup?
Oh, other than Glenn. Damn.
Ooh.
All right, those are my questions. We will make sure to get these shipped out to you. I'll be in touch via email and get these little goodie bags out your way. Yeah, I don't have that one, Mariano. I did not get the Raptor squad for this.
Yeah, do they have names,
and
the
I think-
Velociraptors? I don't know.
I don't remember them either. It's like Ghost is
And
one
I
or
figured,
something.
I figured Chris would ask a question about the Raptors being, head of Jurassic Outpost. So that makes sense. So hi to Chris. So this is really great to see.
Awesome. I'm so stoked. Thank you all. Yeah, it's Ghost Red Panther. Those sound right to me. I'll take it. Thank you all for showing up and spending time with us again to celebrate this amazing book. So much love and clearly passion went into this project. Thank you to my team at Insight for putting this together. I always get the joy of taking the finished product and bringing it to the world. So I'm so grateful to have had such a warm reception. We will be sending this recording out in an email to all of you and all the registrants, and you're welcome to share it with whomever you think will get a kick out of this. And yeah, that's it for me. Glenn, Derrick, James, thank you. This is fantastic.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you
Well,
also
thank
for
you.
organizing. Derrick, thank you for hosting. You've been brilliant. And Glenn, thank you for being awesome, basically.
Thank you. Well, and James, thank you for writing just two amazing books. Derrick, your passion is just so obvious. And Amanda, thank you so much for organizing all this. And I hope everyone gets out there and reads that book because there's things in there that I hadn't heard about or read about, and I was just pouring over every page like a little kid. So it was awesome.
Well, thank you all for having me. It was really fun. It was great.